Gur mil maid agus de chéad fáilte ruta aire agus a bhealach amháin tasúil an gurrábhar seo nachhfuil mór an saneolalas ad faoi rheumatoid arthritis is cúis andaríre ach is cúis sláinte gan dáta ach tá mámhaoch is mar tuigh an gúil tú grach go magur gur tú héine hanig isteach. Minister, this issue has been raised with me by a number of constituents in the Galway area. Rheumatoid arthritis is a very serious issue for an awful lot of people, and strangely enough it isn't something that's just limited to older people, as there might be a perception. There's a particular difficulty with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and the issue I'm raising is basically the cost of people who are suffering from this ailment. My understanding is that the medical expertise in this area has improved radically over the last number of years, thankfully, but that's had a knock-on effect of the people who are suffering from this ailment, because apparently people who would have been suffering from rheumatoid arthritis in the past would have found themselves very quickly on a disability payment and therefore would have been eligible for a medical card. What I'm being told now is that because of the improvements in the medicine for dealing with this area, people are in a position to remain working even though they might be suffering from rheumatoid arthritis, and children, for example, with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis are continuing obviously with their schooling and are trying to live as normal a life as possible. But to do that, people have to take quite an extensive concoction of different drugs. Not everything works the same way for each different patient. I have an example here of one particular constituent who told me that the drugs that they're taking for seropositive rheumatoid arthritis include Plaquenil, methotrexate, anti-TNF biologic drug, Mobicam, Arcoxia, Ixprem, etc. They're also taking dietary supplements, vitamin D, fish oils, glucosamine, chondroitin, etc. People are also, it's suggested in the treatment as well that people obviously look towards their nutrition and exercise, trying to do swimming, cycling, yoga, tai chi, acupuncture where possible, podiatry and orthotics also come into it. They also need to take regular eye tests and chest x-rays before starting biologic drugs, and regular blood tests to monitor inflammation and also side effects of drugs on liver, etc. So it is obviously an area that is very, very expensive for somebody who is suffering from this issue. What I'm asking is whether or not the Minister for Health will consider having rheumatoid arthritis considered as one of the ailments, one of the illnesses for the medical card, because it is a long-term illness, it isn't curable. Unfortunately, what we find happening is that some people are not totally debilitated, they don't go on to a disability payment, so therefore they're not eligible for a medical card, but these very extensive costs that relate to the rheumatoid arthritis do continue. And I have an example here as well of a constituent who was diagnosed within the last year, and just they don't have a medical card, they have been working. Just the net cost approximately in the last year of all the different tests and medicines, etc. to them was around about €3,000, which they could only claim back approximately €500 under the medical one tax regime. There are also knock-on effects to that person's career, because obviously when they're suffering from something this serious, they can't work to the extent that they might have done previously. And then there are the ongoing annual costs of this, which are estimated for this particular individual in and around €1,500 to €1,800 per year, with other costs for probiotics, fish oils, etc. of €130 per month ongoing. So really what I'm saying is, it's also been said that the rheumatoid arthritis and the symptoms that go with it have been compared very much to diabetes, which has been included on the list of long-term illnesses, which makes people eligible for a medical card. So the science would seem to point that it's a very similar type of illness. What we're doing is, if we don't allow people like this to have a medical card to cope with their illness, is that, number one, either they can't afford to get the treatments that they need, therefore they're going to end up on disability sooner rather than later, and we're also blocking them from staying on, keeping as much of a lively lifestyle and a working lifestyle as possible. So I am calling on the Minister, would he consider having rheumatoid arthritis considered as one of the long-term illnesses when people are applying for a medical card, so that would allow them to continue to deal with their ailment, but maintain as positive a lifestyle as possible.
I'm replying on behalf of Ministers James Riley and Alex White, who have provided me with the following script. The Government is committed to introducing on a phased basis a universal GP service without fees within its first term of office, as set out in the programme for government. This policy constitutes a fundamental element in the government's health reform programme. This government is the first in the history of this state to have committed itself to implementing a universal GP service for the entire population. Having examined the progress made in the Universal GP Care Plan, it became clear that the legal and administrative framework required to provide a robust basis for eligibility for a GP service based on having a particular medical condition is likely to be overly complex and bureaucratic for a short-term arrangement. Relatively complex primary legislation would be required in order to provide a GP service on the basis of a person having a particular illness. As well as primary legislation, there would be a need for secondary legislation to give full effect to this approach for each condition. While it would not be impossible to achieve this, it would take several months more to finalise the primary legislation, followed then by the preparation of statutory instruments. The Cabinet Committee on Health has discussed the issues relating to the delay in the initial step of the rollout of the Universal GP service. In doing so, it has considered the importance of weighing the balance between, on the one hand, resolving the legal issues, but with further delay, and on the other hand, with the need to bring forward an important programme for government commitment with a minimum of further delay. No decision has been taken by the Cabinet Committee or by the Government on changing the first step of the plan to extend GP care without fees to a person with chronic illness. Instead, it has been agreed that the Department of Health should examine a number of alternative options with regard to the phased implementation of a universal GP service without fees. Minister Riley and Minister of State White expect to report back to the Cabinet Committee in the near future. Currently, medical cards are provided to persons who are, in the opinion of the Health Service Executive, unable without undue hardship to arrange GP services for themselves and their dependents. Assessment for a medical card is determined primarily by reference to the means, including the income and the reasonable expenditure of the applicant and his or her partner and dependents. In the assessment process, the HSE can take into account medical costs incurred by an individual or a family. Those who are not eligible for a medical card may still be able to avail of a GP visit card, which covers the cost of general practice consultations. The long-term illness scheme is a separate, non-means tested scheme that provides free medicines and medical appliances to people with specified conditions. There are no plans to extend the list of conditions covered by this scheme.
Thanks, Minister. One final question.
And I do appreciate that you're reading on behalf of Minister Riley, but would you, I would ask that perhaps you might relate to him, would he be willing to actually do a specific review of rheumatoid arthritis to have it included in the long-term illness scheme? And seeing as finances within your own remit, Minister, perhaps the amount claimable back under Med1 might be reviewed in your budgetary process that you're having a look at, I'm sure, at the moment, for people in these types of situations who are finding it very difficult to cope and whose medical expenses are very, very high. So perhaps when you're even deliberating yourself on the budgetary scenario, you might be able to have a look at people who are particularly suffering from rheumatoid arthritis with huge costs, maybe being able to claim back more in the interim until a specific review can be done.
Thank you, sir.
I'll inform James Riley of your views, and I'll ask him to have a look at the record of the Shannon so that he has your views as expressed. It's too soon to talk about what might or might not happen in the budget. Maybe you'd raise that with me at a later stage.